Howdy, everybody. It's old Cody over here at the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum, located in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma, and we got ourselves another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast. And I don't got my normal co-host with me today. He couldn't get off work for this special podcast, but we got the next best thing. We had to call in the big guns today for the co-hosting duties. We got Steve Barnard, good friend of mine. Steve Barnard, great contributor to the museum and a good friend of ours. Hey, Steve, how you doing today, and who do we got over there today?
I'm doing all right, Cody. We've got Tommy Wayman, and he's going to tell us some good stories.
The great Tommy Wayman. Tommy, glad to have you.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, Tommy, you're one of the greatest polo players to ever live, to ever swing a polo mallet. I want to let everybody know that right off the bat, but I want to get started first on your bringing up around here in Osage County.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about your family?
Yeah, my dad was born and raised on Doga Creek, west of Burbank. George Wayman, the sheriff, was here for 40-some years. My uncle, and so I'll get kind of how people don't realize that there was polo in Osage County and K County because E.W. Marlin had polo fields, Lewentz had polo fields, and R.L. Donaldson, west of Burbank, had 2 polo fields out there, and they competed against teams from St. Louis and Kansas City, and so this was before my dad got into it. When the war started, a guy by the name of Jack Scheider, who had a ranch south of Burbank there, would go to San Antonio in the wintertime to play. And he wound up knowing Harold Berry, was a great polo player, 9-go polo player. And so when the war broke out, he got Harold to come up and run his ranch. And my dad was in high school, and Dad would work for him on weekends. And they got to know each other real well, and they always had horses. So after the war, Dad went off to war. After the war, he went back to go to work for Harold. And one day, Harold said, "Well, Billy, let's go get a polo job." Dad said, "Harold, I don't know what polo is." He said, "Well, you'll learn." So they go to Vernon, Texas, and they go to work for Buster Wharton, who's an heir of the Wagner Ranch. And he had a couple polo fields, and people would come in there and play polo in the spring and polo in the fall. And then Dad and Harold would get bored. They'd go to the wagon and rope wild cows, wild steers. And finally, Buster would take a drink with you, and he'd show up polo game hammered, and you get one chucker in. Well, then Dad would take his other 5. So that's how Dad got to play. And so Harold and Dad left there, and they went to work for Don Beveridge, who had car hauling. They hauled from Detroit to factories to the dealers. And they went to work for him, and they'd go to Florida in the winter and Chicago in the summer. And I just hanging around there, and I had a little old mare that Dad bought for me at Newkirk, of all places, Newkirk. And so she went wherever we went, that mare went. Well, Dad would ride 8 or 9 horses a day, and I'd ride her every time he went out. I went out on her. She was the fittest little thing. And so I got a chance to play with some kids in Boca Raton, Florida. And they outlawed me because my horse was too good. So then Dad quit about when I was in the 1st grade. And so I went to start school in Ponca and Burbank until about the 3rd grade, and he got back into it. And then when I was 14, started playing in Wichita, Kansas, not known as a mecca of polo, but it was then. And kind of got playing better and better, and got recognized by some of the good players, and they'd hire me to go to Chicago, hire me to go to Florida to play, and then you get good enough, you got to have more horses. So and my dad was a horseman, true horseman, and he really really formed my polo career with the horses. And so then I started OSU, and I'd fly out on Thursday evening and get to Florida at Miami at 1 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't old enough to rent a car, so they'd send somebody to pick me up. And I'd play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and catch a flight back out of Miami into Tulsa.
Were you playing on a team down there?
Yeah, yeah.
Someone picked you up, and they're paying you to come down there and play in Florida.
Yeah. And
while you're going to school up there.
Probably the best thing that ever happened to me as far as my education is concerned, because in those days there wasn't nothing to do on a plane but study. And it, I didn't study all that much, but yeah, that's how I went. I kept in school and kind of paid my way through school. And I was down there at the same time Kelly Corbin was down there, and I used to go turn calves out for him, and so it was kind of. And
did you know Rusty Martin and Walt Garrison and them?
Knew Walt
them
Garrison
guys?
well. Yeah, yeah. Walt. I'm not going to tell that story. But,
okay, but it's a good one.
It is. But then when I got out of school, I got married. Got married on Saturday in Tulsa. Flew that afternoon to Santa Barbara. The finals of the Pacific Coast Open was on Sunday. We went to Las Vegas Monday, flew back to L.A. on Tuesday, caught a flight to London on Wednesday, and I had a practice game on Friday.
Wow.
And then you go from London, or you go from England to Argentina to Spain to New Zealand, Australia, Mexico. So it's been a hell of a life if you don't weekend.
What about Harold Berry? You kind of touched on him for just a second. I knew him as a kid.
Yeah.
Seemed like a great man growing up, but
I
didn't know who he was and what he was.
Yeah. He was a big. He weighed damn near 300 pounds, but horseman. Oh man, he sat on a horse, sat right over the withers, and he would ride as light as a 150-pound man, and everything was correct. And he was my dad's teacher, and Dad was my teacher, and Harold was my teacher as well. That's how I got into the big time. He went to work for the president of Schlitz Brewery, and he lived in Truscott, Texas. Well, he'd drive through Wichita, and he'd spend a weekend or maybe 2 weekends there on his way up and play. Well, Dad made me play against him because he said, you're never going to learn anything unless you play against some people better than you. And I was like 2 goals, and he was like 9 goals. Well, I just like a gnat at him. But he got up there and to Milwaukee, and he wasn't satisfied with the team he had, so he called Dad and he said, send Tommy up here. And so I went up there and I played in a 16-goal tournament with him, which is a pretty good tournament, and we won it. And then the next year, well, that winter I won another tournament in Florida with him. And then I went full-time with him and Mr. Eline for about 9 years, and also went to England and Spain with him, and Argentina. You got to remember that this is a cowboy that got into polo through his brother bought remount horses for the government. And you get $165 a remount horse, but you get $200 for a polo pony prospect. And so then they thought, well, if we're going to have prospects, we better learn this game. And they're just a bunch of cowboys out there hitting the ball. Well, they got good. And my father-in-law bought a ranch in Argentina. And he said, okay, I want to send you and Harold and Wayne Brown down there and buy whatever cattle you want, buy whatever horses you want, whatever you need. A big ranch. And so they run in 750 some horses. And they said, which ones you want? I said, ride them all. Well, the ones that run off and buck the people off, we didn't take them. I think we got 350 horses. Went through the cows same way, preg checked them, which they'd never preg checked down there. And then it gets down to the oxen. Now, Harold was raised on a ranch. Wayne was raised on a ranch. I was raised on a ranch. We didn't know a damn thing about oxen. And so they said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, hook them up. The ones that run off, we didn't take them. They went to the killers or to the meat packers. And then we got 60 yoke of oxen, which they used. We still have one yoke left. But it was going back 50 years, you know. No trucks, no trailers, everything's horseback. Cowboys went to town, they rode 60 miles to town. No, it's unbelievable it's not that way now. We've got cell phone service. Every gaucho's got a cell phone now, which they found out they can't hide. But no, that was quite an experience. And but then at the same time, you're developing polo and you're getting better horses and you're getting to play against better players and you get better. And then the game itself, when you're in a zone, it's slow motion. And somebody asked me, what is a zone? And I said, well, it's when you're in the zone when the ball finds you. And it's like a bareback rider, saddle bronc rider. You're in the zone when that horse comes to you. You don't go to him. And that's what makes those great rides, is those great horses. And a great polo player, if he can get in that zone, you can't lose. And we have so many variables with the game. You got 6 horses per game. Each horse is different. You're playing against a team. There's 4 players on the team. The field's 300 yards long and 160 yards wide. So there's a lot of area to make mistakes in. And of course, you live and breathe it. You're at the barn 7 days a week. And I'd get into a finals of a tournament, and I'd get up early. I'd get up 4:30. Well, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd go to playing that game in my head. And I knew every horse that my opponents was riding, knew my horses. I knew which horses to play against what. And I'd leave about 4:30, 4:45, and I'd tell my wife what the score of that game was going to be that day, and I wouldn't miss it, a goal or two. So, I mean, you're wrapped up in it. And it's just, like I say, you're wrapped up in it, and then you meet great people. Like I was fortunate enough to play against Prince Philip, Prince Charles, the King of Spain, and you know, these guys, they get to know you, and they'll look you up. If you're at a polo game, they'll look you up and talk about polo games and horses. The Queen, I was interviewed with the Queen about a horse I had that was the best playing horse in the world at that time. And she was wanting to know his breeding and where he come from and how I got him. And actually come off ranch in South Dakota, and the guy that owned him, he'd bucked him off and broke his leg, and the guy that owned the ranch, he said, okay, the horse goes, or you and the horse both go. So we wound up with him, but he never bucked me off. I could talk him out of it. But then I could put my little daughter on him and it wouldn't do anything. So.
Did they lay a bunch of rules down for you before you met the Queen of England? Or?
Oh yeah, you had to know to bow and you know, all that kind of stuff. And I don't think Joe Barry and I were very good at it. She just laughed at it. But no, great lady, very, very, very personable lady, intelligent about horses, asked really fantastic questions, and you know, she had a lot of race horses, and so she is a horsewoman. Prince Philip, he was a little rough. If he got you in your sights, he wouldn't pull up. But the first time we played against him, Joe Barry, Harold's son, and I, Joe run over him, and I said, "Damn, Joe." He said, he rode up and he tried to bow on a horse and say, sorry, sir. He jumped up. I mean, a couple of hicks come to town over there, you know. And Joe got there a week before I did. And they said the dressing room is over here, changing room. We never changed the room. We back of a trailer or something, you know, put your white pants on. So Joe said, I know where it's at. He'd played the week before. We go in there and he says, now, I want to watch these Englishmen. I said, what? He said, they wear pantyhose. I said, no, get out of here. He said, no, you watch them. Well, they did. They had tights they'd put on, and then they'd put pads down in those tights. They were that rough. And the one thing about it, they couldn't hit us because they couldn't catch us. We'd run away from them. And we got a kick out of that. And years later, that team when Prince Philip was on, we'd tease them all the time about wearing tights. And they were good about it. They were good about it. But it's just little stuff like that that the public never hears or never sees, that what great people they are.
Well, while we're on the subject of some royalty, you mentioned the King of Spain.
Yes.
You played against him.
Actually,
for him.
he had quit playing by the time I got over there, but every year at the winners of the King's Cup, he would present trophies. And so we got to know him that way. We wanted enough that we kind of got on a first-name basis, but not first-name basis, but he knew us and would talk and visit with us. And a great fellow, great guy. So,
No kidding.
yeah.
So, Tommy, not everybody knows everything about polo like you do. I think I'm taking it for granted that everyone might know what this goals mean, like a 10 goal or a 9 goal, or you said you were a 2 goal playing with a 9 goal when you first started, and that's how you might have got so good. Can you explain a few of the simple rules of polo just so the general public can understand it?
Well, the goals is a system of handicapping, and it's from -1 to 10. And it's not you don't have to score 10 goals to be a 10-goal player. It's your value to the team, and the value of the team is determined by your horses, your horsemanship, your play, and it's a variable. It's a variable, and that you master it. You play enough that you can read the plays. Like I say, the field is 300 yards long, 160 yards wide, and the goal posts are 24 feet apart. And it's got boards, side boards, 12-inch boards. But wherever that ball is on the field, you've got to have a positive and a negative. If, say, that ball is in the center of the field, well, you don't want to let that other guy get to it and hit it hard because you want to be there. So you have to read the plays and read where they're going to hit the ball, be there on the end of it, and make it go the other way. And a lot of strategy, and it's like I say, it's the value that other players put on you as a team player, horseman. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for a horseman to be a polo player, and it's very difficult for a polo player to be a horseman. A horseman will make the horse, but he will never take him to the vanishing point. The vanishing point is when you take him too far and you hurt him. The control is the whole thing, and when you lose control, you've lost the horse. A polo player can't think about the horse during the chukker. He's playing the game, playing the game. A horseman thinks only of the horse when he's playing the game. So there's very few of us that can do both and not hurt the horse. And so know when the horse has had enough. And I don't mean physically hurt one, but mentally. It's a mental game. And you ride couple thousand head of horses, and you pick up traits, and they drop a back lead, they won't do this, they won't do that. And I always told Rosie, I said, I'm going to sit my wife. I said, I'll stay in this game till I go to bed riding the sorry one, and I'll wake up on the same horse the next morning, and then I'm done. you know. So I used to, you know, you just, like I say, you lived and breathed it. So
What kind of horses does a guy look for when you're going to buy a polo playing prospect?
basically, a lot of thoroughbred horses off the track. There's a lot of thoroughbred horses, but there's a certain type, and the type is you really want a quarter horse type, muscle and quick, and basically I school my horses like a little bit of reining horse, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now, the true my dad said true polo pony is not a breed, it's a type, and it's probably the greatest animal athlete in the world if you think about it. The Kentucky Derby's 2 minutes. The cutting horse performs for 2 minutes. Reining horse performs for 2 minutes. This polo pony's got to do all that for 7.5 minutes with another guy chasing you, swinging a mallet, and running over you. And no, it's the greatest animal athlete in the world. And you can take a good polo pony, you can go rope calves, you can team rope, you can do anything. I've done it. And no, but they're broke. They're sure enough broke. And you 75 to 80% of the game's horses, and so you strive to get those horses, and I've got bits. When I left San Antonio to move to Wyoming, my daughter, I said, you just count the bits. I had 150 polo bridles, and I've got pictures of it, one whole wall of polo bridles. And she counted 640 some bits that I had when I moved up there. And each bit did something different, you know. And you just get that little edge, it just puts that horse over the top for you. And so.
Tommy, probably most people don't know how rough a sport that
Yeah.
polo is. Mm-hmm. You've broke several bones.
Yeah, I broke a vertebra in my back. That's kind of a funny story. A guy did it on purpose. I was at a practice game in England, and we were going to send the horses 2 days on to Spain to play there. There was 5 tournaments in Spain, and they were 26 goals, which means that the 4 players' handicaps cannot exceed 26 goals, which is very good polo. And this guy cut in front of me and took the front end out of me. And he did it on purpose because he turned back and looked at me. And that was in April, and I didn't go to the doctor until, well, in December, because I took November off, and but I got to Florida and I couldn't put boots on, couldn't put my chaps on. So a friend of mine took me to the doctor, and he said, you broke that vertebra at an angle from. And he says it's trying to mend back. And he said, I suggest that you don't play for 6 months. So I met him halfway. I didn't play during the week, I only played on Sundays. And it healed up, but I'm feeling it now. And broke the vertebra in my back. I pulled the muscles off my my shoulders, both shoulders. I've had to operate on both shoulders twice. Jerked this thumb off. That was a story. Playing in San Antonio in the finals of the Butler Handicap, and a guy hooked me and jerked my thumb back. It hurt like hell, but I didn't have time this is about the second or third chucker, and I didn't have time to worry about it. So after the game, a guy walked by and he said, you want a beer? And I said, sure. And he handed me a beer, and it just fell on the ground. Well, my thumb was laid back against my arm. Woo! It pulled all the ligaments. So the guy that owned the polo club was good friends with the owners of the Spurs, and they got me in to see the orthopod, I guess you call him. And so they went through, and he drilled through the ligament, through the bone, looped it back, went back through the ligament, back through the bone, and put a wire, and put a button on the top of my thumb, and put a cast on. My fingers were free to my elbow, And I had to play that Wednesday in England. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I'm loading suitcases. That's the other half of my life. I've loaded more suitcases, I guess, than anybody. Anyway, I'm loading these suitcases. And I thought, well, that's what I'll do. It's like a bareback rigging. That's what I'll do. So I get to England. I got a very good friend who's a saddle maker over there. And he makes me 2 sets of draw reins and 2 straight reins that are easy to change. And I put a hole every 1.5 inches. And I'd get my reins even where I wanted them on a particular horse. You're always changing on different horses. I'd get where I wanted, and then I'd run a bolt through there and bolt my hand to those reins. And then I taped a whip on that cast. And I played that way for 2 months. And then when I got back to California, they took all the wire out and went on.
The top guys now, would they do something like that?
No, they're kind of wussy, in my opinion. I mean, Argentine guys, they'll fall off or get knocked down or something, and then do the cockroach. They lay on their back and kick, and no, you didn't do that. I mean,
well, now they probably let it heal properly so they don't.
Yeah,
but back then, that was a cowboy thing to do.
You wanted to eat.
Yep.
You had to keep going, and. But no, I'm not saying that these guys are wussy, but they use it to their advantage, because if they can play up a wreck and they can make that umpire give them a foul, it's not cheating, but everybody knows it, you know.
Are they acting a little bit like the NBA out there now?
Yeah.
Over-exaggerating every little thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was wondering how physical it just actually got, but I imagine polo is actually a pretty dangerous sport, you know, unless you know what you're doing.
I didn't finish my story about the guy that broke my vertebra. I played against him 2 or 3 years later in Florida, and he was a kind of a ladies' man, and he's Argentine. He'd comb that black hair back, good-looking guy. Family had race horses, and he was 8 gold, 7 gold. But he always had this big gold necklace around his neck. And I didn't do that kind of stuff, pay attention to me. Well, I got him set in my sights, and they actually blew a foul on me, and I deserved it. But that gray horse in there that I said I sold to my daughter for a kiss and a penny,
yes,
a kiss and a dime, I was riding him, and he would run over a freight train. And I got him in my sights, and I hit him so hard, his horse went down, and that gold necklace, links of it were flying. And after the game, there's kids out there picking up those gold links. You just have to buy them back off him. You don't really intentionally hurt somebody. You just make it look like it's their fault. So.
Well, you get what's coming to you sometimes too.
Yeah.
So. That's all right. Back to growing up around here, where a lot of great cowboys grew up and a lot of great horsemen. What was it like to? Did you ever see any of the guys around here try to ride one of your polo playing saddles that hadn't never rode one, and have any good stories on that?
Yeah, Steve Barnard's dad. When Dad and Harold were at the Wagner Ranch, they came down to visit us, and they were very great fans. And Orville Moore and Steve's dad, and they put him on a horse, flat saddle with a mallet. And Dad says he never will forget that Jim swung at the ball and couldn't believe he didn't hit it. Looked up at it like there was a hole in it. But it was all in fun. And but you know, when I was growing up around here, we were always working cows, working calves, shipping steers. Worked a lot with the Haddon Ranch and Donaldson Ranch, and so we cowboyed, and that was the basis for my horsemanship was ranch work. I hated building fence or hauling hay, but I could ride all of it. But no, it was the foundation for me playing polo was all the horses that we rode and went through here.
Did you ever do any roping or anything, Tommy, around here?
Yeah, I won a go around the cavalcade one year, and Steve and I used to rope calves together all the time.
And chickens.
Chickens. We ran out of chickens.
What? I tried putting a chicken roping on here one time, and they put the kibosh on it here in town. So what happened on y'all's chicken roping?
Well, we'd break a neck, and we'd stuff it in a pipe and tell Steve's mother that the coons got it.
Oh, okay.
And,
well, it sounds like a good thing we didn't end up doing a chicken roping.
She knew what was going on. But the world's champion chicken roping is in Story, Wyoming. And it's a big deal. It draws a lot of people.
I saw one in Sheridan one time when I was up there for the rodeo. They were having a chicken roping right there on Main Street of some sort. So
they'll rope anything.
Oh, yeah. They like roping up there in Sheridan.
Yeah.
About as much as they like roping right around here.
Yeah.
Just about.
I asked Tommy once, I said, have you ever seen one of them chicken ropings? Because I never had seen it. He said, seen it, said, we invented it.
Yeah. Sheridan up there.
Yeah. Beautiful place. I had another 10-go player come through there, and we were sitting at the clubhouse. We were sitting at the table and benches and talking. And he said, why did you move here? Why did you retire here? And I said, you see those mountains there? He said, yeah, they're beautiful. I said, you can get them in Colorado. You can get them in New Mexico. You can get them anywhere. I said, the reason I stayed here was the people, and that's the true story. They're the most open people. There's, and of course, not many of them knew I was in polo, and I didn't want them to know I was in polo. You know, I want them to like me because for me, not you get all those phonies and stuff, and not, the people there are just really, really down to earth, common people, and we just love it. We just love it, and.
You know, here they have the Ben Johnson Memorial Roping, Steve. In fact, this is going to be the 67th annual this year. Up there, they got a big, cool steer roping named Don King Days.
Don King Days, yeah.
I've never been able to go up there and rope. We've driven by it on our way to Pendleton before. Yeah. But what's the deal with that roping up there? What makes it a little bit more different than all the rest of it?
It's all on the grass, 70 acres, no arena. It's lap and tap. No, not lap tap. They got a barrier, but they drive them out like they do in Pendleton. And when they hit that green, man, some of those steers are gone. You got to have a horse off the track to catch them. And they have 2 days of it, and each day they have a match bronc riding, which is fun to see, bronc riding on 70 acres of grass. And those horses buck through the crowd. It's Western, you know. And it's so much fun, and some years they have a wild cow milking, which the cows will go through the crowd, and it's just 2 days of fun. They've got a polo game first in the morning, sometimes two, and Calcutta starts at 1, and then they'll do. This year, because of COVID, they did 3 go-arounds and a short go in one day. And it was all day, but they got her done. And it's for a great cause, and a great man, Don King, who's no longer with us, was a famous saddle maker and leatherman for years and years and years. And, okay, this is something else. When he was a young kid, he worked polo in California. So it's a small world. I mean, all these cowboys migrating to polo, in and out. And his son played polo, Bill King. And so it's not, people think it's far-fetched to go from cowboy or working on a ranch to polo, but it's not. It's not. There's more avenues than you think. Yeah.
We talked about Pendleton and stuff a while ago. So rodeo has Pendleton, Cheyenne, Salinas, Calgary, national finals. Mm-hmm. What does polo have?
United States Open. It's like you win that, you won the world. And and sometimes they play it in different places, but yeah, it's like winning the world. It really is. And I actually won it the first time I got to the finals in 1968 and I got beaten overtime. And I was with Harold. And the next year, Apsharp put a team together just to put another team in the Open. It was a 20-goal team, and the tournament was 22 goals or 24 goals. And we won it. It's the first time a 20-goal team ever won it. And I was fortunate enough to win it 6 times. So.
Is that a record?
No, Memo Gracida's got the record. I played in it 18 times and won it 6, and got beat 4 of those times that I should have won.
When you guys travel overseas, did y'all take your own horses, or did you have a set of horses over there that you rode that someone hauled around for you or something?
All my horses, I sent horses from here over there, and I sent horses from Argentina over there. And I'd leave a string of horses there, and then I had another string here, and I had another string in Argentina, green horses. And they didn't stay green very long, but I'll tell you something interesting, and I've told a lot of these roper buddies of mine. We learned something in shipping horses, and it was so simple. A friend of mine in California was a veterinarian, Dr. Billy Linfoot, and he was 9 goals. And we're shipping horses to England, and when you ship a horse and he doesn't drink, it's not the taste of the water, it's the smell of the water that they don't like. And he said, I'm going to try this. He said, you ought to try it. It's okay. So we got Coca-Cola, and they put in their water buckets every day for about 10 days before they left. And then when they got over there, we put the same, that Coke's made the same all over the world. That's the best thing. And we'd put the Coke in the water over there and then gradually wean them off of it. Never had a horse that quit drinking. Never had a horse quit drinking. And I've told these guys that ship these horses around to try it, and some of them have, and they put electrolytes in there, but Coke is a lot cheaper, and and just little stuff like that you pick up that you become a horseman that way. So.
Well, I wish I'd have known that a few years ago when I was rodeoing. I had a horse that sometimes he'd go off feed, sometimes he'd go off not drink for a couple days. It didn't seem like it.
It's the smell. It's the smell of the water, not obviously the sugar didn't do anything bad about it, but it changed the smell of the water to smell like Coke.
So when you say you ship them, did you ship them over on ships? Did we fly them over there?
Flew them over.
Flew them over.
Mm-hmm. And then we'd get them ready in England and fly them to Spain and play there 5 weeks and fly them back to England to play the Gold Cup.
Would you guys ride with the horses on the
I did
on the
one
plane?
time, and I'd never crawl on that thing again. I was a nervous wreck. And when they close that door and that pilot hands you that manila envelope with that 45 in there, and he said, if any of them throw a fit, don't hit the side of the plane.
Oh, my Lord.
So, and I bought insurance for the other guys. I didn't do it. No.
So what all does it entail to get a string of horses to the airport and get them on a plane, get them over there and get them off a plane? What all just on a typical trip, typical for you, which is very untypical for anybody else?
Well, we took
sending a string of horses to Europe over there.
We took an American team to Argentina to play the Cup of the Americas, which is a series between Argentines and Americans. And the players got their horses. A lot of people donated horses. I had 9. And we put 52 head on a 727 DC stretch. But they had collapsible petitions. You back them in there, and the petition locks like this, and the next petition locks like that, and they're on an angle. And it's better on an angle because when you take off and you land, they can kind of give with it. If they're standing broadside, a lot of them fall over. And we flew them out of San Antonio, flew them into Osage Airport in Buenos Aires. They met us there with trucks. We didn't. They met the guys that worked for me, and took them to a military base with stables, and that's where we stabled them, in a military base that had 8 or 10 polo fields. So we stayed there and practiced and got our horses fit. And then on the way back, same thing. landed in San Antonio. We had the trucks and trailers, take them right, had a ramp, walking down that ramp right into the trailer. And the worst thing about it was they had to inspect all our saddles and bridles and stuff like that, and you had to wait around for that. But no, it's just time consuming. It's time consuming.
Probably lots and lots of veterinarian paperwork and
Yes.
and things like that, permits.
And we took a vet with us, and South Texas vet, and he spoke Spanish, and so it was easy, very easy. And a lot of the veterinarians down there are polo players, so we got to know them real well. So
Boy, that's something else.
it is. I had 3 horses down there that I put in with my string, so I wound up with 12. And the next year, when the Argentines came up to San Antonio to play the game, I had 4 horses. I had the bar horses. I got crippled, and lightning killed one. I mean, just bad luck. It's like a calf roper when his good horse dies. He might have a heck of a horse that he practices on, but you get off that horse that you have so much confidence in, it takes a while to build confidence in that other one. And it's the same thing with polo player. You have to get confidence and repeat.
For some reason in my mind, I was just thinking a guy like you just step off of one right to another good polo horse, and you didn't have to do a whole lot of training in your prime. For some reason, I was thinking
I was spoiled because Dad's thing was always control, and any time I'd get that feeling that I was losing control, you've been run over enough times that you pull out. You won't go in there, but control. And,
I want to step back to the equipment for just a second. You mentioned Byers bits a while ago. I've heard Steve mention Byers bits and spurs.
Mm-hmm.
What makes Byers in particular so desirable for the polo market?
well, there again, Harold Berry. He lived in Truscott, and Mr. Byers was a wheat farmer there, and Wagner Cowboys, Pitchfork Cowboys, they'd go to him and he'd make them spurs and make them bits. And Harold got to know him real well, and so Harold had him design a Berry gag, which is, I mean, it's worldwide. People have Berry gags. It's the old mule bit, the old wire mule bit, but it's made out of stainless and doesn't cut. And he made that, and then people got to getting them off of him, and then Harold had a pair of spurs made, and everybody liked his spurs, and so that was a badge of honor to have a pair of Byers spurs. And of course he passed away, and it got a lot of copies, but they're not Byers. They sit on a boot, they don't bounce, they sit right there, they're not heavy. He always told me that when spur fit, the top of the band on the inside is where it'll be worn, not the bottom. And I don't think he ever rode a horse, but he rode a tractor and made all this stuff. Harold designed it, and he built it.
My grandpa told me he knew Mr. Byers too, along with Mr. Berry, and I never knew he was just a wheat farmer from down there.
I went by his place one time, and he'd been plowing, and there was a lot of Indian wars around there. That's where Cynthia Ann Parker was captured.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he heard a clunk on the plow. He got off. He went back, and there's a cap and ball pistol there. The handle had been rotted off of it, and it's frozen, and it was frozen loaded. So he said he took it into the shop and just threw it in a 5-gallon bucket of diesel. And he said it sat there for about a year. And he fooled around, got it all working, got it apart, took the bullets out, built all the springs, grips, everything, fired it one time and hung it over the door. And as far as I know, that it's the Museum of the Plains in Canyon, Texas, got his whole shop. And for years it was intact, just like he left it. There was stuff sitting on the anvil, just like he left it. And the last time I was down there, they got somebody, they broke it up, which I wish they hadn't done. An artist, he was an artist, just like John. I mean, God gave him the gift. You know?
And they seem to work with a lot of stainless steel.
Yeah, when he first went out, he used a lot of sweet steel. I've got a lot of cowboy bits that are sweet steel.
Oh, okay.
But the polo people, you know, they're finicky. They want their tack cleaned after every time it's used, and they want everything shine. That's comes from the East Coast, but and so that's kind of why he made it out of stainless, and it just looked better, you know, hanging on the wall. But he was a craftsman, artist.
I've seen a lot of his work. Steve one time told me he had a chance to buy Harold Berry's Buyer's Spurs and couldn't get them traded for that day. Says
I know the guy that bought them.
been kicking himself in the butt ever since that day.
Well, I didn't have the money.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a pair he drug out the other day with the, what do they call that bull, Steve?
Matador bull.
The Matador bull.
And all of Harold's bits, his brand was a dart on the left hip, and on his spurs had a dart on the left hip of that Matador bull, and it had a rattlesnake on the shank.
Oh, wow.
That kind of impressed him in England, you know.
That Matador bull is really cool looking on those spurs.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of his trademarks of making stuff right there. What about your saddles?
Good saddles. Bill Gray, William F. Gray from New York made the best saddle, and they were difficult to get because when Mr. Gray died, they ceased producing those saddles. And every one I ran across, I'd buy. And then there's an outfit in Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas Polo makes a very good saddle. It's almost an exact copy of Mr. Gray's. There's a lot of cheap saddles out there that, you know, that will break and spread and hurt horses' backs, and it's like you use quality stuff, and it's cheaper in the long run because you know, you break a tree in one of those things, you can't really fix it. And so Mr. Gray, his trees were all rawhide covered, and the Argentines, they're not. They're kind of made out of balsa wood. You know, and so no, you kept your equipment, took good care of your equipment. And mallets, they go from 49 inches to 53 inches. They're bamboo cane shaft, and tepa wood heads. Tepa wood is a wood in Argentina that's very hard, and we're using plastic balls, and that plastic ball just bounces off that tepa wood, and it goes. I've seen people make a goal from 150 yards, and that's. I did it a couple times, but it's purely accidental. But no.
Seems like polo playing ought to be a little bit like hockey. There ought to be a bunch of guys with a bunch of missing teeth, it seems like.
Well, there are.
Are there?
There are.
Between the mallets and the ball.
And there again, I knocked Joe Barry's teeth out one time playing with him. But it was a complete accident. And 2 years after that, he was shooting at me to get me back, but I ducked. And, no, but it's fun. I mean, you might play against these guys on Sunday and might fight and feud, and then you might be playing with them next Sunday. You never know, you know. So, and it's a big family,
Sounds about like rodeoing.
It is.
A lot like it. Mm-hmm. You've traded a lot of polo horses through the years, and you were telling us a story about trading some over in, and I think the statutes of limitations are out now, so you can probably tell us that story again, because that was so interesting. There's just a lot of things you have to go through to get your horses to this place that the people wanted.
The Manila Polo Club in the Manila, Philippines called me, and they said, we want 15 horses. And I said, okay, send somebody to try them. My outfit was in San Antonio. They said, no, we want you to send them. And I said, I'm not going to send you 15 horses because I don't know really what you want, and I want them to be good. I want them to satisfy. I said, what I'll do is I've got a video camera, and as far as I know, this first horse is ever sold on video. I know Polo Pony. So I videoed 30 head, and videoed the horse and the bridle they went in, and showed them schooling the horse, and then I showed them playing the chucker. And I sent them the video, and they said we want 15, this one, this one, this one. So there will be a truck at your place such and such day, and there was. Put 15 head on that truck, and it went from there to San Francisco. And they put these horses on a boat and sent them to the Philippines. Now, Philippine law is only breeding stock. They'll accept mares or stallions, no geldings. Well, 3 of these that they picked out were geldings. And I told them that, and they said, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. So I had a vet friend. We were into the embryo transplants. This was in the 80s. And he's a Filipino vet, and he went home, and he went out there, and they all want them branded. My brand was a white 2, Freeze brand 2. So he went out there and checked the horses, and those 3 geldings were there. And he said, how'd you get these geldings in here? And they got that boat about a mile offshore, and they had a bunch of little kids, and they pushed those horses off that boat, and those kids swam them in. And that's how they got them in there. And nothing was ever said or done or anything. It was none of my business. That was their job. But it's funny ways of doing things.
Well, not everyone. I don't know about swimming, jumping a horse off a ship and swimming them in the ocean.
Well, those kids were riding them and, hanging on their tail and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But make fun out of it.
Well, you're probably one of the most famous people we've had on here. You were telling us another story a while ago, and I got to have you repeat this while you're here. Oh. Paul Harvey, everyone's heard him, the rest of the story.
All right, Paul Harvey's people got a hold of me in Chicago, and I don't know if they got a hold of me or the polo manager got a hold of me for him, but he wanted to interview me in his studio in downtown Chicago, and he wanted me to bring a horse. So I had a pretty quiet mare, and so get down there, and you're parking on the downtown Chicago. You unload this mare, and you take her in this building, and he's on like the 9th floor, and you put her in a freight elevator and get her up there and walk her right out of that freight elevator into his studio. He interviews me maybe 10 minutes. Very, very nice guy. Asked a lot of perfect questions. Talked about my horse. Turned around, loaded in the freight elevator, and took her back to Oak Brook. But that's the only time I've ever been asked to bring a horse to a recording studio and be interviewed. So,
a lot of cowboys, they get sponsored by, Wrangler and rope companies and stuff. I was looking at a sponsorship ad of yours the other day, Rolex
and Piaget. I had to deal with Piaget, and
that ain't your normal cowboy sponsor right there.
No. And that's a funny story on that. I did a print ad, and they sponsored, Piaget sponsored a team in the World Cup. It was all Americans. And I was 9 goals. And so we got beat, but in the contract, we had to go to 2 parties and be available for a print ad. Well, I did the print ad. They flew me out to California, and they didn't get it all done in one day, and I had to play the next game, San Antonio, so they flew me back the next day. And it turned out good. Well, in the meantime, before the print ad came out, and I went to 10 goals, and so they had to do it all over again and put 10 goals on that thing. Well, we were playing in Washington, D.C., and Rolex was there, and so was Piaget. And somebody walked by and said, "Let me see your watch." And I had a Rolex. And somebody went to the head of Piaget and said, you didn't give him a Piaget watch? He said, "That will be rectified Monday morning." So Monday, this thing comes in, and I had to pay tax on it, So I'd wear it when it was appropriate, to functions. And then my son got old enough, and he kind of confiscated it. He was kind of little Western, and so he wrecks a car and just splits his face right down the middle. But he was wearing that watch, and he's left-handed. Well, we found pieces of it. We got it all together but one link. And I go back every year to try to find that link, and I haven't found it yet. So, but that's my watch story.
Well, that's something else.
Yeah.
I know a lot of cowboys that are sponsored by some folks, but definitely not anything like a premium watch company like that. What, when you're putting together a polo team, are they all sponsored by,
Rolex and Piaget, yes. We were all professionals working for them.
Okay. So each polo team that you see out there that's a professional, they're probably sponsored by something.
Individuals, like I worked for years for an oil man out of Tulsa. And then like I was telling you about handicaps, we might play 16, 20, 22, 26, and our teams would change. But he and I played together all the time. And then if we needed a 7-goal player, we'd go find the best 7-goal player with horses. Because there again, you got to have them mounted. And but usually there was one sponsor, an oil man. Steve Ghost was an oil man from San Antonio. San Antonio was Wichita Falls, Texas. And he built a tremendous polo complex in San Antonio, 16 polo fields, and played the U.S. Open there a lot. And there's just sponsors like that. Butler Aviation for years out of Oak Brook sponsored polo teams.
I've heard it's well over $1 million to sponsor a top polo team.
Well, they're making more than that, these good players, and I was born 30 years too early because I never made that kind of money. But they deserve it. They deserve it. Price of horses, same way. The price has gone sky high, and
that's every kind of horse lately.
Yeah, and you can't find them. That's the thing. And these professionals don't make them. Other people make them for them. When we were playing, we had to make our own. So if we weren't playing in a tournament, we were riding green horses someplace or breaking broncs or something like that. So, but we had to make our own.
You mentioned 10 goals a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
How many 10-goal players?
Today, there's, I can think of 6, probably 7. In the new era, 7. When I was, in 1983, when I went to 10, Memorial Gacita went with me. There was 2 of us. And that's the first time since, what did I say, 99? No, not 99, 89 or something. No, Cecil Smith was 10 goals for 26 years, and then there was a long gap in there, and then I came in as American. Memo was Mexican.
It's a pretty rare thing.
It is. But you know what it is? It's like you get the target on your back gets bigger. It really is. It's pressure. You can't go out and have a bad game. People expect you to be perfect all the time, and you're not, especially if you're changing strings of horses and stuff like that. And but it's pressure. It really is pressure.
You played against all kind of people, celebrities. I'm sure you played in some celebrity pro-ams. Who's some of the big names you played with and against?
Tommy Lee Jones. Alex Cord, Doug Sheehan, he was, and then, oh my God, the guy that sells the gold now, he played. I'll think of his name in a minute.
Tom Selleck.
Not Tom Selleck.
Okay.
No.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. But Tommy Lee, I worked for him and played for him and played against him and coached him. So I know him pretty well. And Bill Devane, they had a celebrity polo team, and they would travel around for charities and play celebrity polo. And then we got to know them in L.A. at the L.A. Equestrian Center. They had indoor polo, and boy, that's a treat. They had a team I think it was called the Colts, and rough. My God, it was rough. It's like roller derby on horseback. You play on Saturday and you can't get on a horse till Wednesday. I mean, it just, terrible. And it's not very much fun. And
What about Sylvester Stallone?
sold him horses and played with him, yeah.
I've seen lots of pictures of him playing polo in the
Yeah.
Inquirer over at the supermarket.
Yeah, no, and nice guy, very nice guy. And
What kind of player is he?
he's a 0-goal player, and his father played. I knew his father from New York, and he played in Florida, and Sly would come down and play horses down there. And then in California, he looked me up and bought some horses off of me, and just super, super nice guy. And
What about Captain Call? What kind of fella is he? Old Tommy Lee.
Barry Corbin describes him, rightfully so, has a personality of a badger, and by God, he's right. He's tough, but I think when he's in the movies, he's very deadly serious, you know. And when Polo, you will get a smile out of him every once in a while. And his wife's really playing a lot more. Tommy doesn't play much polo anymore. But, no, he's a nice guy, but he's a perfectionist. Yeah, and
What about Ben Johnson? Did you ever know him?
yes. I met Ben Johnson first time. He came home here, and they had a barbecue for him. John Shaw had a barbecue for him out at Haddon Ranch, and we were all there, and I met him, and just a kid. And then they invited me to go to one of his celebrity ropings in L.A. Equestrian Center or someplace like that. And so I got there, and they gave me this horse, and actually, Kenny Call loaned me the horse.
Okay. World champion steer roper, Kenny
Yeah.
Call. Won the Ben Johnson here, too.
And I actually I roped with Kenny in this deal, and Ben and John were sitting in the middle of the arena just talking, and I rode up and introduced myself, and shook hands with him. He looked at me and he said, "You Billy's boy or George's boy?" I said, "I'm Billy's." He said, "Nice to meet you," and we visited, and had a great time, and so like again, it's Osage County, you know.
Your uncle. I had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times. Great man. He just passed away, and I'm sorry to hear that from us over here at the museum.
Oh, thank you.
Longest serving sheriff, I think, in maybe in Oklahoma history. For sure, Osage County history.
Yeah,
Great man.
great guy.
He was a good fella. Kept his wits about him the whole time, too,
Oh yeah.
from
And
what Steve tells me.
I'd come down after my parents died. I'd come down every year on Father's Day to visit him, and his mind was so sharp. Well, he'd say, "Well, let's go drive around," and so we'd cut Osage County in fours. This year we'd go to the northeast and northwest, and so we're riding out there west of Fairfax, and this movie reminded me of it. We're riding along there, and I said, "George, where'd they find Henry Rome?" He said, "Stop right here." He said, "Right down over that hill, right there. That car was parked right down there." We're going through Gray Horse, and I said, "Where'd they find Anna Brown?" He said, "Pull up here." He said, 3 Mile Creek, 3 Mile Creek right down there. So he was sharp. And of course it was way before his time, but he'd studied enough to know what was going on at that time.
There's a great picture of him that I've seen during Prohibition when he's busting some whiskey runners, it looks like.
Gallons of whiskey.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he and Bob Schroep.
And they're in the old big, 1 gallon, 2 gallon,
Yeah.
3 gallon jugs with the handle on it that, you see John Wayne take drinks out of on the movies.
Well, what he told me made sense. I never thought of it that way, but if you buy bonded whiskey, like a surrounding state, and bring it in, that's one offense, because the tax has been paid on it. So it's not that big a deal. It's you do a little jail time. But when you make moonshine and stuff, there's no tax, and that's a federal offense with much stronger penalties. And I didn't realize that. And he said, "Yeah." I said, "The guy'd get a bottle of whiskey and they'd chug it, just drink it as fast as they could, because public drunk, you just spent the night in jail. But if they caught you with that whiskey," he said, "you'd spend 30 days. So there was a lot of binge drinking, I guess.
Yeah, whiskey runner, famous whiskey runner from here is in the movie, Henry Grammer.
Okay, I'll tell you a story on Henry Grammer. His gun is in the Fairfax Bank, one of his guns. Very good friend, one-armed bandit's father. I was raised kind of with the one-armed bandit.
Okay.
With his family. Holton loaned me a book, and I looked at it the other day, and Holton was a big historian, and he loaned me this book, and I was looking through it, and I get there, there's a piece of paper in there, and it's Henry Grammer's copy of Henry Grammer's marriage license in that thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We had Harvey Payne in here the other day.
Yeah.
Henry Grammer.
Henry Grammer.
They say he was a mess.
He was tough.
Yes, sir.
He was tough.
They say he was a great roper, though, too.
Oh, yeah.
On top of it.
The one story that I found about Henry Grammer was that he came up here with a load of steers with outfit, Saldana, which is over there north and west of Burbank, rancher. And he spent the summer, and he come back the next year with a load of steers, and they got in here. His brother got a hold of him and said, meet me at the Ponca City Railroad Depot.
Tom Grammer.
Yeah, Tom Grammer, yeah. So they go there, and this guy had killed their other brother. And I think it was Tom said, he's in Canada. I'm going to go kill him. You come with me, and if I get caught, you get me out of there. So he went as far as Malta, Montana. And, well, his brother went across, he got a job bartending. Well, him and a sheep herder got into it, and he killed the sheep herder. And it was self-defense, but they didn't see it that way.
He was a local boy.
Yeah, and so he got 3 years in Deer Lodge, Montana. And the warden knew him, or somebody got a hold of the warden and said, hey, this is a hell of a cowboy. So there's a guy out there on the ranch, and for 3 years he worked on that ranch. And they thought so much of him that when he left, in Deer Lodge they had the horsehair bred and they had the saddle makers. The warden gave him a saddle. And he came back to Ponca City and married this woman and had kids. And he liked the action. And the bootlegging was, as much action as you wanted.
Sounds like he might have got mixed up with the wrong people.
He did.
Hey, Tommy, speaking of Osage County here, what makes you think there's been so many great cowboys, cowgirls, not just ropers? We've had bull riders, saddle bronc riders, horse racers, polo players. We got Kentucky Derby winning horses from here, cutting horse guys. We got, we have guys, build bits and spurs that everybody knows.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this might have been like Stephenville, Texas, before Stephenville, Texas was the cowboy capital of the world.
It was, and it's an attitude, an Oklahoma attitude, in my opinion, is that very competitive. I mean, when they had the land run, you had the Boomers and the Sooners. Well, it seems like all the Sooners wound up in Osage County, and it's very competitive at anything they do, whether it's racing horses, roping calves, bulldogging. It's competition.
A lot of good horse flesh comes from there too.
Well, competition creates great things, and you had Schultz Webster, you had all these great steer ropers, and they worked at it, and the competition is what kept them interested and keeping going, and the horses just came along with the action, I think. You think about Oklahoma basketball. There's nothing any more competitive than basketball. And probably in Osage County, there's not any other sport more competitive than basketball. Maybe football. But roping, polo, it's ingrained in your head. You don't want to lose, but you hate to get beat, And that's the way I think why it is.
Okay. Steve, we hadn't got a word in edgewise with you talking so much down there.
I don't know nothing.
You got anything you want to ask Tommy before we got to shoot on out of here?
Yeah.
We're not going to ride that milk cow again.
No.
Yeah.
Tommy's been a lifelong friend, and all my life was my first friend, and I just enjoy seeing him.
Yeah.
So he's got some great stories, just like his Uncle George.
Steve, he keeps me up on you all the time. I ask about you all the time, Mr. Wayman.
Mr. Wayman was my dad.
No, I can't help it. I can't help it. I got kicked in the butt for not doing that growing up. I kick my kids in the butt for not doing that to this day. So it's that's just a family tradition. I'm doing my best here.
Yeah.
All right, Tommy. I know you've given us a little bit of advice about Osage County, why you think so many great cowboys and cowgirls have came from here. But very seldom do we get a guy like you in here that's done everything, probably been everywhere. You've done business with kings, queens, princes. You've worked for them. You've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world. There's not a whole heck of a lot you haven't done. You own ranches in Argentina. You own places in Sheridan, Wyoming. You've helped set up some of the biggest polo clubs in the nation. I'm just wondering, for the up-and-coming generation, just what kind of just general advice do you might have for them? Anything.
Well, our homegrown players don't work at it. They don't work at it like we do. They see these Argentines come in. They see the Argentines drive up to the field, go in the tent, put their boots on, get their helmet, get on a horse, go play the game, get off, hand the horse, and go away. Well, we can't do that. But these young players think they can get by with that. Well, they don't ever have anything to ride. And so it's a competition. It's a competition. We got as much, the guys that I played with and against and were raised with, it was a competition to who had the best horse, and we worked hard on it. And they don't do that. It's more of a business type approach, I guess. Business with monkey business. They don't get it done. So I think dedication and hard work, you can't beat it. Yeah.
It's probably one reason the horses don't last as long in probably any sport these days as they used to. Even roping, I assume the same thing applies to polo. And
you have to be half veterinarian, You see a tendon coming up, you know what you got to do. You see a ankle, filling, you know what you got to do. These guys today, they'll if they come to the barn at all, they'll put their hand like this and walk down the stall. If they don't feel any fever, they're okay. So it's
just a different day and age.
Different day and age. Yeah.
Used to do it all. Now I guess they want everybody to just do their own little just do their own little job and have plenty of people around to do the jobs. So.
Well, George used to call us Rexall cowboys, didn't he? Yeah. He'd say. One boy, all boy, two boys, half boy, and three boys, no boy at all. And that was Steve and I and Sonny Brock. For a while, they wouldn't let but one of us go. We'd always tearing something up.
Oh, yeah. I get more work out of one than I do three.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I understand that, too. Well, Tommy, Mr. Wayman, thank you so much for coming in. We're so proud to display your career in here, and we're proud that you're from Osage County, Oklahoma. And you haven't forgot your roots, and we haven't forgot you either, Tommy.
George made his statement at lunch one time. He said, it's the greatest state in the Union, the greatest county in the Union. He said, I wouldn't live any other place. And he was right. This is a great state. It's just I can't stay here. Not that I've not wanted or anything, but yeah. So, but I love it, and I love what you're doing here, and 95% of what I said today is propaganda, so you cut it good.
Well, the climate's a little better up there where you're living.
In the summer.
In the summer. Yeah. In the summer. In the winter, it might get a little cold.
Woo, yeah.
All right, everybody. If you want to learn more about Tommy Wayman, one of the greatest polo players to ever live, get on over here to the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum right here in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. We're open 6 days a week. And Tommy, thanks for coming in.
You bet.
Steve, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.